Incredibly proud to propose, on balance, the rise of artificial intelligence will do more harm than good. Some notes on framing at the top. First, we propose a debate on a cost-benefit analysis. Secondly, as an observation, note that the rise of artificial intelligence suggests that it does come at direct competition with conventional means of service as it is in the status quo. So for example, this looks like your nurse not diagnosing you, but rather AI doing that job for that nurse. On to our first contention, which is threats to workers. Our first layer of analysis under this argument is the loss of jobs. Artificial intelligence has supplanted and will replace millions of jobs and hurt workers' quality of life. Through programming, artificial intelligence can be made to mimic humans in many ways, and it's possible of carrying out tasks. As such, artificial intelligence's capabilities pose a threat to people's livelihoods. In fact, 300 million jobs worldwide can be lost to artificial intelligence in the future. This number comes from the fact that artificial intelligence can take over many of the jobs that requires analysis and management and other types of skills. Furthermore, it poses a threat to workers' wages. Artificial intelligence will very likely lower the wages of tasks that require skills that it can meet. So for example, GPS lowered the wages of cab drivers who knew their way around the city because it could do that job instead. Our second layer of analysis is intellectual property theft. Ownership is a core tenet of our society that is destroyed by AI, which cannot have accountability or transparency whatsoever. This is especially dangerous to creative workers. AI can data scrape data without leaving a trace. It can easily plagiarize content as it generates new content. We see this even in the status quo on the rise, as artists' copyrighted work is stolen to generate new artwork on part of the AI. Our third mechanization is identity theft. This is a huge threat to workers, but also just every single individual writ large. So people might think that right now, the simulated podcast, you can very easily simulate people to say certain things when they didn't actually do such. You can simulate photos and make them seem as if they did something when they didn't in fact do that thing. We think that's incredibly dangerous for faking types of actions that might be malicious, that might be, for example, avengeful. The impact here is a decrease in quality of life as people experience following a loss of a job. For example, if you are simulated to do a certain thing, you might, for example, be canceled as an influencer or something like that, or you might just lose relationships with others. But impact level for this whole contention, you realize in a decrease of wage, intellectual property theft, and identity theft. People's lives rely on the things that sustain them, such as jobs and getting proper credit. Being recognized as humans and living a good life is the reason why we value our life in the first place. We think that artificial intelligence necessarily takes that away. Our second contention is discrimination. In a world with a discriminatory, oppressive past, it is hard to see how AI could create an equitable future if our current situation continues. It destroys hope for what could one day become a more equal reality. The broken and charged nature of these systems does terrorize communities on all levels. We have two layers of analysis under this argument. The first is local police programs. Facial recognition makes errors while analyzing people of color's faces, and we see this especially with minority groups. These discrepancies emerge from data input for the simple fact that facial recognition software is developed and tested on predominantly white males. That is the reason why Black women's faces are misidentified for over 35% of the time, because it is developed by a majority group. This is increasingly dangerous as law enforcement has recently started to integrate these facial recognition programs to catch criminals. The results of misidentification are far worse than having trouble locking your Apple phone. Can lead to an arrest, long detention, or even worse, police brutality for that individual. This upholds systems of structural violence. Also note that since Black people are more incarcerated in the status quo than white people, and these artificial intelligence systems draw upon that data, they are overwhelmingly more likely to identify a Black individual as a criminal. The second layer of analysis here is discrepancies in racial treatment in healthcare. As they diagnose, AI models are far more likely to prioritize the care of healthy white patients than sicker racial minority patients. We see this as in AI models, there are huge disparities in diagnosing skin cancer, for skin cancer. Again, note that this is an issue of data input. AI medical software has been trained to predominantly work on pale skin tones, leaving darker individuals behind. This is particularly troubling, as Black people and other minority groups are less likely to develop skin cancer, but the repercussions are much more alarming because they do not have as much access to such treatment to address it in the long run. The impact here is creating an entrenching cycle of discrimination that perpetuated death and prejudice in a material way. This looks like structural violence that continues to oppress minorities inequalities through policing and healthcare. This hurts quality of life through an inability to socioeconomically advance a society or to live a good and healthy life. It can even result in death. That has a bigger impact because the oppression of minority groups is amplified when it is cyclical and entrenched, because inherently artificial intelligence is self-perpetuating. It learns from itself. Before I move on to our contention 3, I can take a POI if there is one. Our third contention is military threats. Not only does artificial intelligence purport violence at home, it also does so on a global level. Our first mechanization is the lethal autonomous weapons use. Lethal autonomous weapons are based on artificial intelligence. They're essentially war robots, and the United States has begun implementing these machines. Lethal autonomous weapons lack the capability to meaningfully distinguish between civilians and combatants. This issue exacerbated by the fact that most battlegrounds in the Middle East are heavily populated areas, and they usually have more minority groups. As such, they represent a danger to civilians, innocent people that do not deserve to have their lives taken away. Artificial intelligence just do not follow war principles in a meaningful way, and if they do commit a war crime, there's literally no one to hold accountable because it is a piece of machinery. Our second mechanization is nuclear weapon systems. Human intervention is the only reason why past nuclear crises have been averted. During the Cold War, Petrov, despite getting a warning that a nuclear missile was coming from the Soviet Union, decided not to launch a counter that saved the world from most certain annihilation. The implementation of artificial intelligence into nuclear weapon systems represents a threat to the ability to maintain nuclear deterrence. No longer will we be able to predict the way that other countries will act or whether system errors can be overcome. Without reliability in nuclear deterrence, the safety of the world in the first place deteriorates. The impact here was twofold. A conventional war is incredibly damaging and costly, as many civilian lives are lost. This is massive threat of extinction. We're never willing to risk that or the marginalization of minority groups on that basis. Incredibly proud to propose.
Okay. Awesome. Before I begin my speech, for any POIs, feel free to call them out. I'm not looking at tab room, and I probably won't be talking too fast, but just in case I am, feel free to yell out slow or clear. Okay, my name is Bobby Mehta. My time begins in 3, 2, 1. My partner and I are proud to negate the resolution that, on balance, the rise of artificial intelligence will do more harm going over 3 to maybe 4 disadvantages, and then going on to the AF case in order. Okay, first on some framing, on the burdens, we agree that we should be evaluating this on on a cost-benefit analysis, but we disagree that that artificial intelligence is going to come at the direct means of competition with current services, because in the status quo, it's not just competition that's happening, it's also there as an aid or an added plus or benefit for workers to improve efficiency in jobs, so we don't think that that really makes sense. The affirmative has to prove that AI will prove more harm over good, whereas negation can prove that it's more good than harm, or there's the same amount of good as harm. Either way, if we can prove either of those things, we should be winning. Moving on to our first disadvantage, which is going to be on one environment, a disaster response. In 2017, California wildfires led to the burning of more than 1 million acres of land, and AI has demonstrated its utility in building smart disaster responses and providing real-time data on disasters and weather events. With AI, governments save valuable time and enable disaster response in a more targeted and efficient manner. Once sophisticated enough, it's going to be able to offer early and crucial warnings that will save lives. We want to analyze and focus specifically on the fact that the resolution says the rise of artificial intelligence, which means the future potential AI technologies are part of what you as a judge are going to be considering and which side is going to be winning. B, monitoring and managing natural resources. AI can be used to monitor and learning algorithms can be used to monitor things like deforestation and detect illegal logging activities, which is beneficial for the environment overall. C, optimizing energy consumption. AI can be used to optimize energy consumption in buildings, factories, and other facilities. For example, machine learning algorithms can be used to predict energy demand and adjust heating, cooling, and lighting systems accordingly, leading to energy savings. D, reducing to reduce waste in several ways, such as optimizing supply chains to reduce overproduction, improving recycling processes, and predicting and preventing equipment failures to reduce waste caused by downtime. E, encouraging sustainable practices. It encourages sustainable practices. For example, AI-powered apps can provide personalized recommendations for users on how to reduce their carbon footprint. And F, enhancing renewable energy sources. It can improve the efficiency and effectiveness of renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power. For example, they can predict its output, allowing utilities to better manage their grid. As an underview for this entire contention, what it is that AI, through the use of different algorithms, it can improve of a lot of different in the real world. For example, managing what energy we use, managing our natural resources, and disaster response. AI is a lot more efficient at analyzing those different things rather than humans because it works a lot faster because it is a machine learning algorithm. What are the impacts of this? Well, by predicting natural disasters and generating disaster responses, it's obviously going to save multiple, like countless lives in the future. For example, if there are things like hurricanes or wildfires happening, it can save those people. And then secondly, it's just going to be beneficial for a sustainable environment overall and just keep our environment and our surroundings clean because it can help manage how exactly we use our resources. 2, healthcare. So point A, reduce research reports show that over like half of primary physicians feel stressed from deadlines and pressures, and AI has been key to helping those workers in that specific industry automate certain like tasks that take up a lot of unnecessary time. For example, automating some functions, streamlining procedures, instantly sharing data, and organizing operations. It relieves medical professionals of juggling way too many tasks so that they can focus on the actual thing that we need humans for. B, quicker care leads to saving lives. AI can help clinicians like diagnose patients a lot more quickly and choose which treatment pathway makes the most sense for that patient, determining if they have the right capabilities or patient, ultimately get patients the treatment faster. For example, Health Catalyst has developed a Catalyst AI, a healthcare AI, and a healthcare analytics program that has potentially life-saving technologies for a wide range of clinical scenarios. For example, its machine learning capability can identify those patients at greatest risk of like being readmitted into the hospital, and it can also provide clinicians with guidance that enables them to step in and address the problem. In addition, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many frontline workers around the world have lost their lives to the virus while assisting patients. And in Israel, there's a medical center that's testing smart hospital rooms that could save patients' lives as well as those of doctors and nurses. It believes that AI-powered robots, virtual reality glasses, systems can offer better outcomes for COVID-19 patients. Basically, by reducing a lot of like the unnecessary and menial tasks that workers have to do, it can help reduce the stress that those workers take on and also just make those processes a lot more efficient so that patients can get care faster, leading to a lot more lives saved. 3 is going to be on economy. A, increased business productivity. Automation is one of the most common benefits of AI. Technology has made a great impact on increasing productivity and higher production rates in businesses. B, customer experience. AI-powered solutions can help businesses respond to grievances and queries of customers efficiently through things like chatbots and other processes. See, global economy, irrespective of like AI is predicted to contribute $15 trillion to the world economy by 2030. As per this report, the progressive advances in AI are going to increase the global GDP by up to 14% between now and 2030, which is just going to have a really, really big impact in this round because improving the global economy directly improves a lot of different lives of all those people, of people in all those countries. For example, it can lead to more employment and just more economic circulation overall. A country's economy is essential to things like funding for social services and just better quality of life overall. Okay, I'm not going to read the fourth disadvantage. I'm going to move on to the affirmative case in order. First, on their first contention, through responses on threats to workers. 1, while AI may automate certain tasks and eliminate some jobs, it can also create new job fields such as data. 2, AI can boost productivity by automating routine tasks and streamlining workflows, allowing workers to focus on more strategic tasks. This can lead to increased efficiency and competitiveness for businesses, which can translate into higher employment rates overall. 3, there are also certain skills that only humans possess, such as creativity, emotional intelligence, and interpersonal skills. These skills will continue to be in high demand and can't easily be replaced by machines in the future. Moving on to the point of property theft in response to universities like Dartmouth are already working to implement restrictions on this intellectual property theft. Again, we want to highlight that the resolution says the rise of artificial intelligence will, and what that means is that it's directly referring to the future. We have to focus on the fact that there is a lot of potential for development in AI and a lot of new technologies that are being developed. We're not talking about whether AI is more harmful than good in the present. We're talking about what it can do in the future. AI systems like DALL-E and other AI art tools, in response to artist copyrighted work, AI systems like DALL-E and other AI art tools have been improved, and since the resolution says will, we have to account for this improvement, especially since we know that regulations are being developed at the rate that AI right now to address all of these issues. To a lot more good than harm, or at the very least equal good and equal harm, which means that the negation should be winning. On their second contention of discrimination, as a group to responding to this whole point, all of these issues of discrimination are primarily because of the input and data and the programmers that create AI. This is an issue that is increasingly being solved because software engineers are utilizing bigger and vast data sets. Open source data science and other types of data sets that I could get into if I had like another 10 minutes and tell you more about are being used to reduce bias in AI and create more ethically driven artificial intelligence technology through openness. As time progresses, they're just going to grow language models and these things that they primarily bring up utilize bias aren't well developed enough. And they are being well developed because the data sets that they're using are increasing. This is thus reducing racial discrepancies. In response to lethal autonomous weapons, I'm going to speed up a little bit. According to the Geneva Convention on International Law, the human oversight aspect of laws is necessary, and as time goes on, fewer and fewer of these unrestricted loopholes are able to be found. Improvements in communication technology have also made it possible for laws to work more effectively as a part of a network system. This has improved their ability to coordinate with other military assets and to respond to changing situations real time, as well as react and collaborate with humans better as contain larger algorithms that accommodate ethics and laws. They also talk about like human intervention is the only reason that past crises have been avoided, but in response to this, these AI is still managed by AI by humans, so humans are still going to be like prevalent in these issues. Thus, we urge a strong vote for the negation. Thank you.
Okay, 1 sec. All right. I can take verbal POIs. The order will just be going over op case and then going over gov case. All right. If everybody is ready, then I will begin time now. So in this round, we're weighing on a cost-benefit analysis. Let's go over the framework and what my opponents were talking about. They look at this as an aid to what we're seeing in the status quo, and that it's going to be looking at what it is now, that we're helping status quo systems and that we're only going to be aiding. But the fact of the matter is my opponents miss a completely different thing, is the fact that artificial intelligence is fundamentally different from any technology that we have in the status quo, in the fact that it can act like a human and it can perform tasks that require thinking. My opponents recognize this in response to our first contention, where they talk about how they can perform those lower skill tasks so that they can concentrate on more higher skill tasks. But at the end of the day, does that not take away jobs from lower skill people that typically perform those more menial tasks? That's what I'm talking about, that it's performing tasks that we've never seen before. It's fundamentally different from what we're seeing in the past. It's going to directly compete with the markets we have now. Now, let's go into the first contention. They say that it's going to be helpful for the environment. They give you a couple reasons for this. They tell you that we're going to have smart disaster response. It's going to have early crucial warnings. It's going to be looking at a lot of things. A couple of responses here. The first one is going to be that we can still analyze a lot of this data, but it's going to be with people. This is something we talked about in our first contention too. Analysis can happen with people themselves. And this is a lot of the jobs that are going to be lost, because one of the main things about artificial intelligence is that they can perform the analysis that humans can also do. And then at the end of the day, that leads to loss of jobs for people that were typically reading that data. And what does that mean? That means those jobs are being directly replaced. If we're looking at a cost-benefit analysis, they can't show any real from this. They can't show a material lives saved or a material, again, disaster warning that's going to have a material effect, whereas we're again showing that jobs are actually going to be lost, and the idea that they're going to be reading these analysis and data better than people already shows again that we're going to be having those jobs lost. But secondly, again, what is the larger impact here? They tell you all of these things, that they're going to be like having less management, hurricane and wildfire safety, but the fact of the matter is we do a lot of these things all before they even happen. Wildfires are mostly man-made, so what is the feasibility on those arguments? We don't get a bigger impact here and what exactly that would look like in their world and how that compares to ours. So at the end of the day of these two against each other, our side is clearly going to be ahead, because the material of people actually losing their jobs is going to matter more than any of their environmental impacts, because they don't show any massive gains to the environment. But beyond that, if we're investing in artificial intelligence, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to meet their climate goals. They tell you that we can perhaps better the environment, but they're not going to show that we're going to have meaningful mitigation to reach any actually big environmental goals. If we're only going to say we're going to benefit the environment in some way, well, what does that look like for the impact on humans? We're not actually saying that on their argument without that impact weighed against ours. And they give you this idea of how they said that they're going to be like sharing data, they're going to be using clicker care. A lot of this thing can already be done with humans and technology without artificial intelligence, such as sharing data. But let's look at some of the stuff that they're saying. Again, they're going to be saying that healthcare is going to become more efficient, it's going to become better. But in the vast majority of cases, it's not going to help those that really need it the most. For example, places like in other countries, like in India, or places like in Africa, where they need these implementations the most, artificial intelligence is not going to be implemented there because they don't have those companies there, and they're not going to have a material gain because these are developed by companies. At the end of the day, the people that need this healthcare the most are not going to be getting it. We can also turn this argument because when it implemented into healthcare, as Dr. Kami pointed out, we see bias implemented in the real world. It prioritizes white patients. It looks at minority patients in a different way. For example, it's implemented with the data that we see from doctors in the status quo, and already it's been proven in the past that they are more likely to actually minimize the pain of African American patients, and that is only going to continue and become systematic if we have these systems in place, and we've already seen that from the implementations of artificial intelligence in healthcare. Now let's go on to their third contention. We're going to talk about business, and they said that they're going to be improving the global economy because companies are more efficient. They're going to be able to do more things. A couple of flaws here. We can actually turn this argument because they're only going to improve the economy of wealthy countries. What we're going to see is a perpetuation, or not a perpetuation, but actually an amplification of the status quo of income inequality between countries. That global inequality is only going to be getting worse. Sorry, everyone's camera like went dark. I kind of paused time at 4 minutes, 11 seconds. Is everyone still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Now the cameras are showing up for me.
Yeah, it came back. All right.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'll start it again. All right. So on that, sorry, the countries what we see typically is that digital age past also with the digital age and with the growth of technology and computers is that the benefits have really only been yielded for wealthy countries. Even with computers, we don't see those massive yield or gains in places like Asia and Africa. Even if we're going to talk about the economy itself, the economy of the wealthy countries is really the only one that has grown. And with the invention or the creation of more and more technology, we've only seen that global gap actually increase. We've seen more poverty in places like Africa and Asia. We've seen more unemployment. We've just seen more problems overall and more exploitation. The introduction of artificial intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that the global economy is going to be getting better. North is going to be doing better because those are the ones that are creating the artificial intelligence and the ones that are creating the technology. And because they're not even relying on building parts, they're not going to be exporting any of that manufacturing to other places. It's going to be solely economic output for these global North countries without any benefit to these other countries. What we're going to see is a worsening of the global status quo, or more global inequality, which again is going to only entrench current systems and make it more impossible for those countries, for the developing countries, to develop to the point of becoming developed countries. Now, let's go on to our side of the flow. They intend in our first contention that they're going to be, workers are going to be more strategic. They're going to have workers are going to be more strategic because they can focus on more things. They're going to take care of those more lower skilled tasks. But at the end of the day, those are the jobs that we want to preserve the most, right? I mean, lower skill tasks are typically performed by people that are more vulnerable. If we're going to be taking away those tasks, I mean, obviously, like doctors and lawyers aren't going to be going away, but what we'll see is like medical assistants are going to be going away. Paralegals are going to be going away. Those people that don't have that higher education and need it and need their jobs in order to survive, those are the people that are going to be losing their jobs, and the most vulnerable are going to be hurt the most. When they talk about interpersonal skills and how they can be automated, well, yes, they can. If we're talking about artificial intelligence, they can be programmed to act with kindness or to act a certain way. So at the end of the day, again, we're going to see those interpersonal skills go away, and we can see those interpersonal skills still be implemented in artificial intelligence, and we're going to see those loss of jobs still. I'll take it.
It's fine. Sorry about that.
Okay. Never mind. Okay, so they said that art will be improved through the specific artificial intelligence. Art app will be improved, but at the end of the day, that still doesn't mean that there's going to be safety again for this intellectual security. There's always going to be bad actors that can take advantage of this artificial intelligence. So again, that is still poses a threat to intellectual security and to those jobs. And secondly, on discrimination, they said there's going to be lots of development in the future. Well, where is that development happening? Again, it's mostly these developers who are in the global north who are developing it, and typically they're not minorities that are developing it. We still see policing that disproportionately affects Black people and Hispanic people because they're not the ones that are coding it. What we see is that in the programming, especially when we're looking at policing data, they're using policing data from the past. And because they're using policing data from the past and putting it into artificial intelligence to use predictive policing and to predict where police in the future, they're only going to get more racialized results over time. It becomes even more systematic, and the system entrenches itself more and more and more. The situation will only get worse in the future, especially when we're talking about things like predictive policing. But even with discrimination, we're not seeing the composition of programmers really changing that much. And beyond that, they haven't made those massive efforts to change those data sets as well. And on our third contention of military threats, they said that legal autonomous weapon systems can work as network systems so they can be more accurate. But actually, we can turn this argument, because if we're using legal autonomous weapon systems as a network, if hacker attacks do happen, it can lead to massacres that kill many people if hackers take advantage of the network system. But beyond that, if they work as a network system, then it still doesn't plot that they can't tell between civilians and combatants. At the end of the day, if they're on the ground and they're killing people, we need to have them as humans so that they're not going to be making those mistakes and lives are not lost needlessly. So for all these reasons, so proud to propose.
All right. Hi, I'm Divya Mohanty, the second speaker for the neg. Verbal POIs for me. The order of the speech is going to be a quick overview of the round, and then I think we're going to go down the negation case and then the affirmation, if that's good with everyone. Also, my internet is a little blippy, so I'm just going to turn off my camera while I speak. Okay. Cool. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so as an overview of the round, Judge, my opponents are looking at AI as a mechanism of the past, along with its flaws of the past. However, in a resolution that says the rise of artificial intelligence will do more harm than good, we're not looking to the past. We're supposed to be looking to the future. Okay, so on the top of case stuff, okay. Basically, what they're saying is that we should be using a cost-benefit analysis. Once again, I would like to say that we should instead be evaluating this as a value round and looking at this as like from a lens of net benefits, like my teammate said in her speech. But they talk about how the reason we have to look at this through a cost-benefit analysis is because an AI can act like a human and can think. However, acting like a human and thinking are very different things, and it's something my opponents seem to be confusing. Humans are still going to be very different than AI ever will. AI or machines is not going to be able to, and it's not looking like it will anytime soon, emulate the empathetic and creative skills that humans possess. And that's why a majority of humans continue to maintain their jobs, as well as if you look at like something, an AI system, right? Even like these AI art systems, they don't have an imagination of their own, for example, right? So clearly some of this creative / empathetic skills is something that's completely unique to humans. So
POI.
I'm sorry, I have a lot to get through. Actually, yeah, go ahead.
So the fact that they don't use their own imagination and draw upon the work of other artists means that their development of art is inherently intellectual theft in any case.
I'll get to that in my when I get to the intellectual theft thing. And I'll have my responses there. Okay. On the environment contention. Basically, they talk wildfires. Okay, there are a couple of and they basically are trying to say that there's no difference between this AI analysis This allows for a more comprehensive and accurate understanding of environmental conditions, which is crucial in predicting the wildfires. Like, sure, humans can predict when a hurricane is coming, but it's much, much slower and much, much harder. Secondly, AI can identify patterns and trends in the data that might be difficult or impossible for humans to detect. For example, AI can identify super minute changes in wind speed or temperature that might indicate the onset of a hurricane or a wildfire over 2 weeks before a human can. Third, AI can make predictions and generate forecasts based on the data analyzes. This allows for early warning systems to be put in place, which helps mitigate the impacts of hurricanes and wildfires. It helps improve them. It helps people evacuate, take other precautions. There's a huge difference here. And finally, AI can assist in the response to hurricanes and wildfires and tornadoes, other natural disasters as well, by providing real-time information about the location, behavior of the events. This can help emergency responders deploy resources more effectively and efficiently. An environmental scale for natural disasters is earthquakes. Earthquakes are extremely difficult to detect early on, and that's why when AI can detect super tiny shifts in the ground, I'm sorry, I have a lot to get there. I don't think I'm going to get to it. It helps predict something as big as an earthquake, which has made huge leaps in seismology. Okay. On to the health. Oh yeah, they talk about how we should be weighing this unemployment thing. I'll address the unemployment point when I get to their case, but they tell us how we should weigh unemployment over this. However, the fact is this isn't going to lead to unemployment because sure, there are some things a human specifically can do, and there are other things that the AI is just better at. So for example, also these humans throughout this can still have jobs. For example, like people, meteorologists aren't going to lose their jobs just because AI is analyzing data. They can do more like in detail things. Okay, they talk about on healthcare. They talk about how it can be done with humans, and so the technology isn't going to really help those that really need it. The point here is that we don't want some of these jobs, especially in the healthcare industry, to be done by humans, because in the status quo, these healthcare professionals are struggling. For example, like the average nurse/patient ratio is closer to 1 nurse to 8 patients or 1 nurse to 10 patients, as opposed to the safer, more manageable 1 nurse to about 3 to 5 patients. So when we look at these nurses who are not only handling all of these patients, but they're also handling drawing this medicine, they're also handling putting in all the, if we take for some of the more menial tasks, this is where they need their skills most. For example, like in the empathetic department, or like in the actual like medical department, like vaccinations, all of that. They talk about how India and Africa need these, and these are not going to be implemented there. My response to these will be the same response I'll have to the third contention, where they say the same thing on global inequality. So on to the third contention, they basically talk about how this will only improve the economy of wealthy countries, so which will and global inequality. We argue that as artificial intelligence continues to grow and its importance in helping countries worldwide increases, there are going to be more international initiatives to help developing countries to gain access to artificial intelligence. Why might you ask? We have literally seen the same thing happen in the past with all the other technologies. For example, renewable energy technology has been one of the rising technologies in the world, and because of its benefit to the world in fighting global climate change, it has grown so much. There have been initiatives like the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Convention signed, and this has taken to increase the technology even in developing countries such as India or wait, what was this one? Ethiopia. So these are all not only like they're doing this with renewable energy and other rising technologies, so we can only assume that it'll be the same for AI. Okay, on to the AF case. Okay, first contention, threats to workers. They basically talk about how this takes away jobs from like lower skilled people such as medical assistants, paralegals, etc. Okay, couple of responses here. First off, these jobs aren't going to be completely taken away from like medical assistants. For example, like we said, in the healthcare world, these medical assistants are literally struggling. They are being stretched thin. They're having to do jobs that they're like way underqualified for. So instead, we would like to like take away these menial tasks and help them not become as stretched thin, focus and like learn, which is something that oftentimes are just medical students who are trying to search for jobs and like improve their skills. Secondly, they talk about how AI can be programmed to act with kindness. You can't have an AI walk from like room to room to room in a hospital, checking on patients, seeing how they're doing, seeing if they need help. You can't have AI do that. There are some things that are literally unique to humans. They talk about how, okay, onto the intellectual property theft. Once again, they haven't refuted our point where we said that researchers at top universities like Dartmouth are already working to implement destructive restrictions on this intellectual property theft. So AI systems like DALL-E, which have been complained about this, are literally being improved in the status quo. They talk about how bad actors can be like done to this, but like bad actors, that whole argument is completely non-unique because frankly, an artist can also just plagiarize something the same way an AI can, so that argument is non-unique. They talk about discrimination. They talk about how all of this data is done by like the global north and all of that. However, once again, as AI has become something normalized, it has been spreading worldwide. One of the examples they use in their refute is like India, right? And one thing you need to know, Judge, is that India is literally in like the top 5 countries of like developing AI, as right beside the US and China. They also talk about how a human actor. Okay, onto the warfare one. A human actor will always be worse and more biased than AI ever will. And so, for all of these reasons and more, I urge a strong negative ballot. Thank you.
Okay. So if you're flowing on paper, I'd be flowing this on a completely new sheet. I'm going to be talking about some major points. First on the first on the negation, and then I'm going to be talking about just preempting some affirmative points. Okay, my time for a 4-minute speech begins in 3, 2, 1. As an overview of this round, my opponents evaluate artificial intelligence in the past, and a lot of the flaws that they point out with AI are completely non-unique. In fact, a future where there's no AI and just humans, we can argue that a lot of these issues are going to get only just worse. Okay, so we agreed on valuing this as cost-benefit analysis. You can also extend our analysis in the first speech where we tell you that the affirmative has to prove that AI will cause more harm than good, and the negation has to prove that AI will lead to more good than harm or equal good and harm. There are going to be 2 major reasons that you're going to be voting for negation this round. One is going to be on our point of saving lives. A lot of our contentions come to the same impact impact of saving lives. In the long run, AI is going to be saving more lives than the affirmative view of the future ever will. A is on disaster response. Explanation, second speech, where she tells you how AI is going to respond to major disasters and save lives in the case of an accident. Their only responses here are like, oh, we can analyze this kind of data with just paper, like people. It leads to unemployment, and we can track hurricanes with humans as well as wildfires. However, this impact of just like of some jobs being lost is going to be outweighed by two reasons. One is going to be that AI is a lot more efficient at analyzing disasters and being able to generate those disaster responses, so more lives are going to be saved faster and a lot quicker and more efficiently. And two, the fact that these AI systems being implemented also leads to like more jobs being created in like just managing those AI systems first of all, and also like producing the AI systems. So overall, support we under saving lives is going to be our point on quicker care in healthcare. AI is essential in healthcare because healthcare is an industry where like medical professionals have to conduct like millions of tasks in one single day, and a lot of those menial tasks can be solved by an AI. Their only response here is like, oh, well, it's taking jobs away from workers and can be done with humans and using technology. This is a lot of their responses to our case and a lot of their points in their case as well. I'll get to a bigger response to that later. Yes, but the point is that we don't want the jobs to be done by humans, because in the status quo, these healthcare professionals are literally struggling to do those jobs. If they're struggling so much, and like if AI taking over is really going to be taking away jobs, that in the present, those menial jobs, healthcare professionals would have less stress because the hospitals would like employ more people to take those jobs. But the thing is, hospitals don't have the ability to employ more people to take those jobs. That's why they need things like artificial intelligence technology to reduce the stress that they have on present workers. And overall, AI is also going to be able to evaluate like patient condition. Overall, they don't really respond to our point on quicker care. There's no responses there other than like, oh, it can be done with humans, but AI is just more efficient. Like that's the whole point of artificial intelligence, to be more efficient than humans are with these like small tasks. The second reason you're going to be voting for is going to be improved efficiency, leading to a better economy. AI is going to be streamlining thousands of processes and helping global economy. We live in an age of technology, an era where growing technology is essential for improving our lives overall. Technology is the reason I'm able to debate here with you, and it's the reason you're able to see me right now. It has the potential to improve economies, and AI is just one of those many technologies. It's predicted to give, again, $15 trillion to the global economy, just improve GDP overall by 2030, and this is going to be essential to improving just like the quality of life of people, because it contributes to things like social services and stuff like that. Their only response here is like, oh, it's going to lead to global inequality, and but again, you can extend our response to the second speech, where we tell you that when technology starts to grow, there are more international initiatives to because they're just beneficial overall. You can extend the Kyoto Protocol and climate change example. Moving on to some preempts. They're like, they're going to come up in their next speech and they're going to talk about how like AI is biased, it's discriminatory, and it leads to a lot of like bad actions overall. But well, we argue against this. You can extend my partner, where she tells you that human actors are going to be far worse than AI ever will. AI bias is going to be considerably less than human bias will. In the future, if humans are the ones managing jobs, even in healthcare, you see that bias exists because of humans themselves. And AI is at least more responsible and less biased because it contains data from multiple different data sets, whereas humans have that just like singular bias, and they have the ability to push that bias a lot more than artificial intelligence ever will. Second of all, on their point of like unemployment, which is basically their major point in this round, again, we argue that this is mitigated by the fact that AI can first of all save lives, and second of all, like a lot of these like industries they're struggling. They need this artificial intelligence to improve their lives, and third of all, AI also creates a lot of jobs. You can extend our reputation in the first speech, where we tell you that it creates jobs in things like data processing, and they don't really respond to this point. Therefore, we urge a strong vote for the negation.
Opposition's strategic mistake is essentially saying that artificial intelligence is equivalent to all forms of technology, to all forms of algorithms. We see that with their disaster response, with their healthcare, a lot of this could be mitigated by the use of technology. We tell you in Sebastian's speech that a lot of algorithms can streamline data, can use menial tasks, for example, if they really want to talk about nurse burnout. But we tell you that the really meaningful thing about artificial intelligence is that it literally acts as a human, which means that it's competition, the low-skilled jobs that these humans do need to put food on the table. We tell you that's one of the most massive impacts in this round. They don't do any really meaningful impact weighing. Their only meaningful thing they can essentially extend is disaster response. In this speech, I'll first go over their case and then go over the voters. On disaster response, they essentially try and tell you that artificial intelligence is preferable because it's more efficient. Then they try and say that otherwise, without artificial intelligence, people would have to go through pieces of data one by one. But look, algorithms that are not artificial intelligence do exist. These types of data sorting can be automated to streamline the process in our world as well without we tell you that the impact is very much mitigated, not unique in our world. But then we tell you that detection devices are not AI. We can still detect these types of things with humans in our world. They say that they can provide information. Information is provided by technology already. Secondly, we tell you that analysis should happen with people themselves because even if slower, we massively outweigh on the impact of analysis, how the loss of jobs for lower skilled workers was the most meaningful. So sure, some meteorologists will stay, but many and the bulk of workers will lose their jobs because of the simple fact that artificial intelligence does think like a human. They can see the jobs are lost. They can't meaningfully mechanize that this is going to literally solve climate change. We tell you that jobs, which fundamentally define people's abilities to put food on the table, is the most immediate, most approximate impact. We then tell you that on healthcare, even if they reduce worker stress, the point is that not having a job at all is much worse than having a stressful job. The fact of the matter is, when you're automating these low skill jobs, you're ensuring that many people are losing their jobs, they're getting fired, it's not given to the people who need it because of this impact of global inequality. We also tell you that meaningful and menial tasks can be automated with technology already, and that this will minimize the pain of African American patients. It will marginalize minority groups in their world. We tell you that upholding these systems of structural oppression was always going to be an immediate impact you needed to weigh, especially because it's drawing on historical data. That was very important because they try to tell you that they're going to expand data sets. But the point at which, when the past historical data sets of incarcerated individuals is predominantly African American people, that means that these artificial intelligence algorithms are disproportionately going to recognize these African individuals as criminals. We tell you that they can't just expand data sets by incarcerating more white people that didn't really engage with their link at all. On business, Sebastian told you very simply, the benefits have only been yielded for wealthy countries. Even if you increase global GDP, has not actually been being used in the countries that need it most to experience the most type of marginal benefit. We tell you that with renewable energy, it still has not reached developing countries in a meaningful way. Sure, India is a single one-off example of the artificial intelligence being used in a developing world, but there are plenty of developing countries that do not even have access to clean water. They aren't going to be given artificial intelligence if there's no structural incentive for developed countries to do so, even if it makes them competitive. So on voters, we tell you that the most important voter is the loss of jobs because it is their offense. Firstly, we're telling you that this is not going to create new job opportunities because lower skilled tasks are still going to be not going to be performed by those who are the most vulnerable, who don't have access to higher education, who have to have these jobs in the first place. We tell you that interpersonal skills can absolutely be automated. So sure, the nurses might go door to door, but they don't actually have these mechanizations as to how technology cannot be used to care for patients, things like that, as it expands. We tell you that on theft, note that our bad actors argument came into play for identity theft. That was especially crucial because you can essentially feign a statement from a single individual that's going to be very important for maintaining social relationships, and that was not meaningfully engaged with. But we also told you that this intellectual property theft is going to be very important for creative individuals. They essentially try and tell you that they're going to implement safeguards. But the very important thing, and this leads to our second massive voter on violence, is that there's no structural incentive to improve the safety of these algorithms right now. That's why they're not pursuing them in a meaningful way in the status quo. Right now, these marginalized communities are being killed en masse by lethal autonomous weapons because there's no structural incentive to improve, even if these minor groups are pursuing activism initiatives. We tell you that the most massive voter is also violence, because they literally conceded all of Sebastian's frontlining in the block. We tell you that fewer loopholes are not going to be found. They tell you how these robots will not be able to follow rules of distinction. They're going to kill civilians. They are en masse kill more marginalized groups because they don't have the necessary data sets, and it's not going to be expended in a meaningful way as they don't prove to you that there's a structural incentive to do so. We showed you how that hacking was a massive threat that was going to lead to more threats of violence on all levels. On that basis, very proud to propose.
All right, thanks everyone. I'm gonna just go to tab room, input my decision, and then when I'm ready, I'll give a quick oral RFD. But it probably won't be a super long oral RFD because I do want to go grab some dinner. But I will type everything out into the tab room. So, all right, I'll be back. All right, y'all. I am ready to give the RFD whenever y'all are present and ready. I don't see. Oh, okay. There you go. All right. So if everyone's here, my RFD is that I affirmed the resolution and voted for the go. I want to thank everyone for participating in this round. I think that y'all did an excellent job. It's a pleasure to listen to, and everyone did very well in terms of speaking style and rhetoric and delivery. The specific arguments that I voted off of, or that I really considered in the ballot, were the job loss argument, the disaster response argument, and the inequality injustice argument. I guess that was kind of two, because one of them was about the bad data sets targeting minorities or performing poorly for minorities. And then the other one was more of a geopolitical international sense. So I guess those kind of two arguments, but that was sort of the least important of the three. I did think Gov got a little bit, not that Gov got confused in their last speech, but the points contradicted each other. And overall as well for the final speech, I think that, or not just the final speech, but almost for the whole round, I think that Gov should have kicked some of their arguments, so like abandoned a few of their arguments, because there was some that that the Gov team was pretty convincingly winning on, but then some that just weren't going that well at all. And I think it's sometimes more effective to just focus on what's going well for your round rather than just trying to Gov brought up a good point that not every technology is artificial intelligence. And I agree with that. I think we all agree with that. There's algorithms and any type of robot and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So not everything is AI. But then in the very next point, Gov said that the bulk of job losses will be because of AI, right? And so then in that sense, the kind of the nexus of improvement of efficiency would therefore be AI. Because if the job losses aren't due to AI, if they're due to something else, then it's not AI driving the improvements and it's not AI behind it. And so it seems a little contradictory. And so therefore, like, you wouldn't say that the benefits of the technological gain are because of AI. So the way I saw that is the job loss argument, it either doesn't have much offense on behalf of Gov, or if you look at the disaster response argument, that one kind of flows to the op. That therefore the AI is driving better disaster responses and it is helping save lives. And so the way I interpreted it is that I gave that one to the op for disaster response. I thought that they argued that very well. It made sense. And I think that Gov could kind of feel it too, that they were winning on that one. But the job losses beyond that little blip in the final speech, I think Gov kind of propagated the argument well and supported it well throughout their speeches in a very martial approach, and were consistent in their analysis of it. And in terms of scope, it seems like the overall job loss that would affect the most vulnerable workers across all sectors in many different countries seems like it kind of overwhelms the offense from the disaster response. And so that was a big voter for me. Also voted Gov for the minority injustice poor data sets argument. The defense on that from the op was that the data sets will get bigger and more broad. And that does offer some amount of defense, but I kind of see that, and I agree with the Gov in their response, that that's just more of a bad thing. Like they said, it was a really great phrase. It was like, they don't engage the link. I think one of the Gov speakers said that. I thought that was a kind of clever way to phrase. It's just more of you're getting more of a bad thing when you have bigger data sets. It's not necessarily remedying the underlying issue there. But that one was kind of minor. To me, it mostly came down to the job loss versus disaster response, and this just came down to weight. All right, that is my RFD. Thank you all for sharing your debate with me, and have a great rest of your time.